Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 33. I have Irakli Iagorashvili. He's coming to us from the wonderful country of Georgia in the Caucasus Mountains. He's the founder of the Ayn Rand Center Georgia. How you doing?
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well here. 10-hour difference, but we'll work this out. I'm excited to hear about this. I visited your country and I loved it for so many reasons. But yeah, so for starters,
Great pleasure to be here.
yeah. For starters, how did you get into Ayn Rand and how did you become a liberty activist?
Before Ayn Rand, I was already in this movement. As a classical liberal, I could call myself. And then on one of the events, I found out Rand's book I got as a gift, and that was a period when I moved to US for a semester study. And then with the help of social media, I got more and more information, and I always knew that I have the book of this woman, and that was a period when I started to look more into. I was in the U.S., so I had an opportunity to discuss it with people opposing her, and normally because my university was a little bit leftist, and but people knew about her, unlike in Georgia. Like in Georgia nowadays, many people know, but during that period, not there was not many people who were like interested in Ayn Rand, and that really gave me opportunity to discuss her philosophy and her ideas. And then when I came back to Georgia, I directly involved in Jungle School, which is the program created by Ayn Rand Center Europe, and it really helped me to develop and to get more information from professional speakers and to get involved in the movement. And then I decided to spread on my own and found this organization, which was initially a Facebook group and Facebook page. So I was just posting, different information, different translations, and then we gave it as a more more official form, and we founded official organization last year, in the beginning of last year, with with two friends of mine, and since then we are hosting different events. We are publishing really nice videos about Ayn Rand, and we are having it today to celebrate Ayn Rand Day, a big event already registered with more than 60 people. So after that call, I'm really excited to start preparing for the meeting. So we are having a really long day.
Yes, indeed. The 2nd of February was Ayn Rand's birthday, so that's certainly something definitely worth celebrating. Where were you in America? What university or what school?
I was doing political science one semester at Castleton University in Vermont. Um, it's in nearby Rutland in Castleton, a small village.
Yeah. Oh wow, yeah, yeah. If you were in Vermont, I can imagine how that was lefty wise. Don't know if you ever made it over to New Hampshire for the Free State Project, but that's definitely something worth checking out.
Yeah, I didn't know all of that when I was there, and when I came back, I then heard. So
Yeah, yeah. The guy who conceived that idea is Jason Sorens, and he's definitely, I remember him in some objectivist forums back in the '90s. He was fairly prominent there. He's a good guy. So yeah. So now you're the. It sounds like it's taken off pretty well. Are you getting a good response over there in Georgia?
yeah, we are quite improving, like getting more and more views on social media, but not only, but a lot of more guests and people not only from Liberty Movement, but people from, general people who are not in Liberty Movement, but just have read Ayn Rand or have heard some of her ideas and they want to know more. And when they come to us, like probably they have read Rand's fiction, but we are uh, promoting more Rand's philosophy, and we are trying to find the ways how we can connect to people from different backgrounds, like all people might not be interested in philosophy. They might be interested in business. They might be interested in like in just literature. So we are trying to provide them with different kind of materials. So, for example, approaching business people through entrepreneurship and what Ayn Rand had like written about that, like the productivity and all those stuff. And when it comes to literature, just approach them through literature. Yeah, or we can choose any topic and then go through it, and not just directly attacking them with metaphysics, epistemology, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it really works, and it really catches their attention, and then we go like through all part of philosophy, and yeah, that's how we connect them on the first, and then how we continue with it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the philosophy is all about just doing stuff. I mean, whether it be creating Reardon metal or doing something interesting. And just,
Yeah.
as John Galt would say, get the hell out of my way. I know Yaron Brooks says he really enjoys going to Georgia. Not necessarily a libertarian, but Andrew Henderson, the guy who runs a company called Nomad Capitalist, he has a channel called Nomad Capitalist. He consults people on to go to a country, go where you're treated best. He loves Georgia. So I really had, so when I went to Georgia, I already heard a lot of nice things. And then I got there and just I thought this was a really nice place. Just, I liked it because there was respect for traditions that worked, but there was also a lot of optimism about the future and a real attitude of that the future is going to be great. And I really just love the vibe I had there. I don't know if you see that vibe the same way, but that's what I saw. Besides Yaron Brook, what other speakers and presenters have you had over there?
We are having a lot of like different speakers coming coming every year. Like Jerome Brook is coming every year, and also like New Economic School. I think you know about the organization often invites like different um, people talking about liberty from liberty movement. Like we are having every year Matt Kibbe and Terry Kibbe, Craig Biddle. Also we had last year, and we're gonna have this year too. Um, yeah, we have a lot of Students for Liberty also hosts an annual conference with a lot of famous speakers from Liberty movement. Yeah, but during COVID, some of the conferences were very limited for speakers abroad, and I think we're gonna continue like we already started after COVID, having such international conferences with speakers from Liberty Movement abroad, and yeah, who else I can remember? Yeah, yeah, from Objectivist normally Jerome Brook and Craig Beadle, and
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, Craig Biddle's
yeah,
from the Objective Standard. Matt Kibbe, he's been an activist for a long time. He's a good guy.
yes,
He was in Georgia. I went to the because I was at Liberty International in Tbilisi.
yes. I unfortunately skipped that conference. I wasn't
Yeah,
living here in Georgia at the time,
yeah,
but I was involved virtually and had communication with Liberty International. I'm alumni of one of their programs, and yeah, I knew that conference went really well, and I recommended many people to go there, so they all
yeah,
uh, came back with positive comments and
yeah.
reviews.
I want to make sure. Did I say that right? Tbilisi,
Yeah, we normally call Tbilisi like we are
Tbilisi,
yeah
Tbilisi,
yeah
Tbilisi.
it's like yeah, it's a little bit hard for foreigners, but we mixing the TB sound without E in the middle, like Tbilisi.
Tbilisi,
But yeah, it's totally okay.
Tbilisi. Yes,
Yes.
Tbilisi. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
Tbilisi. Yeah, it's a. I really. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I was at that conference. You weren't you didn't get to go to that conference. But I've got to comment about that conference is it was the only conference, seminar, convention, whatever I went to that seemed to be split 50-50 about between men and women. And I was amazed. Boy, we got a lot of females here. Good. I mean,
Yeah, it's
so many times they're so out of whack. I don't know what you're doing and what are you doing in Georgia to make this appeal to women. I'm really glad to see that. It's been a problem that the liberty movement has had for a long time. Although I've heard that it was fairly balanced with the Nathaniel Branden Institute back in the 60s. Of course, I wasn't alive then, but that's
I'm not
otherwise.
surprised in Georgia. It's always like that in such informal education conferences or informal education projects. It's normally like that. More we have more women participants, and in youth, more girl
Yeah,
participants than boys and
yeah,
men. Yeah, I'm not surprised with that. I don't have the like why it happens so, but yeah, it's never have been problem like yeah, and I know many uh, young women who are in liberty movement, and yeah, they're so active. And in politics, normally it's men in liberty movement, as in other parts of politics. Like normally there are more men in Georgia, but in such informal meetings, in such in the movement itself, there are a lot of women involved. And yeah, I never surprised about that. Even on our events, it's normally more women coming. Like I'm in non-formal education since I'm 14 years, and I see more and more. Me as a boy was always in minority on such events, and uh, yeah, people
yeah.
always note that.
Yeah, that's good to know. How are you working on translations over there? I mean, how much stuff has been translated of Ayn Rand has been translated into your native language? I believe you. By the way, how do you say Georgia in your own language?
We call it Sakartvelo. It's
Sakartvelo.
yeah, it's connected to Kartvelian. Kartvelian is Georgian
Yeah,
Kartvelian group.
yeah,
Uh, we have five translations. I haven't worked on translations on my own, but we have five translations of all Ayn Rand's fiction, and I'm gonna involve in book translation also, and having idea to translate the virtue of selfishness. Because we have only one nonfiction translated, which is Capitalism: The Unknown Ideal. But I consider the virtue of selfishness one of the main books in Ayn Rand's nonfiction, one of the most
yes,
important if you want to understand objectivism. So I will start by translating it, and then we will say it. I have never translated a book. I normally translate articles and then publish, and normally articles from the Objective Standard. And uh, yeah, let's see how it will go for me to translate a book, and if I succeeded in it, I will continue with other books, philosophy who needs it for the new intellectuals and etc. Because there is a big demand. Like we have, I think we ran out of already from the Will with Living and Anthem. They're not no more available. Like all books are sold and people are really demanding it to have. But we're still have Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, and even though they like Atlas Shrugged in Georgia is a really huge book, like it's it's not like mini version or even UK version that we have, like normal size book, but it's really huge. So, but people not getting afraid of buying it. It's selling a lot, like these days, and I'm really happy for that.
yeah. I want to introduce people to Ayn Rand. There's always one essay I give them, and that's actually the well, not maybe not an essay, but the article that Ayn Rand wrote about Marilyn Monroe after Marilyn Monroe's death. I think that's a great introduction to Ayn Rand. What would you consider a good introduction to Ayn Rand? I mean, something short, not a big fat book, but just like one particular article or essay.
I yeah, I'm more into ethics. I also when I go to like talk to some groups, I always talk about ethics, and I think I always give them the Objectivist Ethics article from The Virtue of Selfishness. I think this article is really revolutionary. It really changes the way we think on certain things, and it's also not too long, like to give a person to read for the first time, and it really gives um, yeah, revolutionary ideas about selfishness, and it has a lot of arguments in it. How why Ayn Rand thinks like rational selfishness was the uh, yeah, was the moral, like to live with. And it's quite interesting article, going through how different organisms function, and then moving through to human beings, and then talking about the virtues and all the objectives virtues. I find this article really interesting. It's not translated in Georgia. I have translated other article about Iron ethics and uh, politics, but yeah, I think once we start book translations, also in the first article of the book. So um, yeah, we have this article is available online, so we are always sharing, and people like it. And I think this article is something that also catches people to read more, and like pushes them to read more.
Yes, the Objectivist Ethics, of course, was actually a speech she gave at the University of Wisconsin here in the States. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
certainly very interesting. Are there any other free market or liberty influences you have that you've read that are outside of objectivism? Maybe Murray Rothbard or F. A. Hayek or
Yeah,
Henry Hazlitt or
yeah, Hayek was very like we have at the university here locally course of introduction to modern thoughts, and we have Hayek there, we have Adam Smith, and we have one Georgian Ilya Chavchavadze, who is the founding father of Georgia, with very classical liberal ideas in 19th century. Mostly, he had an influence on me and some local Georgian writers who, before Ayn Rand, who were like either anti-Russian Empire or anti-Soviet Union, very classical liberal with the ideas of economic freedom. Um, and Hayek had a big influence at the beginning. Not now, I don't agree with much of him, but yeah, this local writers I wanted to talk about is very interesting, especially the founding father of Georgia, Ilya Chavchavadze, is was born in 19 was living in like mostly in 19th century and some parts of 20th century. Yeah, at the time Georgia, was part of Russian Empire, and this man was someone who recreated Georgia out of nothing. And he was not only writer, he was journalist, he was the founder of the first bank in Georgia. He was also like multi-profile person working on the development of Georgia, on the founding of Georgia. And he had different journals and different newspapers. And one of the newspapers, he translated and he published Frederick Bastier's article. We still have this old newspaper which has this Bastier's article, and he's pushing the reader to like read it and to understand it, because it's important ideas in it. And yeah, I think he was, yeah, conservatives also like to catch him, and all the groups in Georgia try to like be associated with him. But I mostly consider him as classical liberal, because he's view, and you also mentioned that Georgia is like people love traditions here, but his view on traditions was that, yeah, traditions are good, but we have to make them compatible with the modern day. So he was not the blind believer of traditions, just following traditions because they're traditions, but rather he was giving a formula that we should uh, like always question our traditions. We should always make it compatible through the modern day, and because of such attitude, he was all like very much against of some of the very important traditions during the day. Like he changed also alphabet. He removed five letters from alphabet, which was very revolutionary action during the time. He was also like was against pushing people that time for war is over. Now we have to learn business. Now we have to learn economy, because nowadays the war is not with guns but with economy. And just people before that were really into like fighting with guns and things like that, and then telling people that you should give up, it's no more a thing, and giving such um, advices that people might be against was very revolutionary. And he was looking the country as a father, and he really did it. He recreated it, and he has also a big influence that we still like read and write and talk in Georgian, because during Russian Empire it was prohibited, and like even the this higher class at the time, this nobleman and all those families were speaking in Russian uh, in Georgia. So he had a big influence on me. And then later came I consider him as an intellectual offspring of him, whose name is Mikhail Javakishvili. He was living mainly during the Soviet Union. He was sentenced to death in 1937, and was very anti-Soviet. Was very um, I consider him one of the person who is close to Rand's ideas, and nowadays I'm working to publish what were the similarities between Rand and him. He wasn't a philosopher; he was mainly writer mm, of realism, not romantic realism, but realism. But his ideas very much on what Rand wrote, with starting from politics through some ethical ideas. Like he was much in favor of free will, of reason against faith, and yeah, like a lot of fundamental ideas of how man should live, like for his own sake. But what I loved in him, he was very brave and very anti-Soviet, and like uh, publishing a lot of anti-Soviet um, articles, not articles, but mainly books and small novels about um, hiding anti-Soviet ideas under it. And he's very influential. He's very um, like also good writer, without considering what he writes, a good style writer. And yeah, I still appreciate and deeply influenced by him. And I think those two persons are very much influenced before Rand, and even now.
Yeah, who was that other? You mentioned Mikhail Javashishvili. Who was that other founding father of Georgia you mentioned? How do you spell that name?
Ilya Chavchavadze, it's Ilia, and then Chachavadze. It's a little bit complicated. I
Okay.
will send in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I looked up. Yeah, Mikhail Javakishvili. That's Mikhei
EIL.
Javakishvili, and
Yes,
then Ilya Chavadze. That's
yes.
Iliachavchavadze. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
I sent second time in the chat because first time was a
yeah.
bit incorrect.
I also know there was a famous the, the national epic poem I heard about, the knight in the panther's skin.
Yes, that's from 13th century.
Yeah, an old epic poem which comes from their national poet Shota Rustaveli. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
I also consider it as something that Ayn Rand would love it, because it's a romantic style. It's about heroes. It's about villains, and all the like those heroes are really good ideals, and it's not like on the first hand objectivist virtues inside, but in some parts they really are, and it's quite well made, and I think that's something that um, objectivists would love, because it's a very romantic poem, and um, it's very well made, and yeah, one of the uh, biggest biggest poem that we have and we are proud of.
Yes. I've noticed a lot of Georgian names either end with VILI or ADZE.
Yes, sure, and it's connected to uh, san in like in many other languages.
Yes.
Uh, Shvili is a san, and ze is also connected to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems it's
Son
such
and
a,
daughter, because we
yeah.
don't have gender in the language in us. We don't have
Yeah.
this distinction.
I'm really curious. What is the origin of the Georgian alphabet? It doesn't really seem like any alphabet that I know. It doesn't look like the Greek alphabet. It doesn't look like Cyrillic. It doesn't look like the Roman alphabet that we use and the English speakers use. It looks maybe looks a little bit like Arabic, but and it doesn't even really look like the Armenian alphabet that much either.
Yeah, I think we had, three alphabets. Now we are using
Yeah,
the one. Old alphabet have some similarities, share some similarities with Armenian alphabet, but this new one is very different. I cannot connect it with Arabic. It's not
yeah,
really like for me. Maybe for others, yeah, it looks a little bit similar because of this round style. But yeah, for me, uh, yeah, it's not similar at all. Um, I don't know specifically what's the origin of it, but it's yeah, it as I know the style comes from. Yeah, I'm not an expert in it and I have no idea,
yeah.
but I heard some similarities with Greek, Old Greek. I've heard of the style because I've heard once, but I'm not sure that when they lost the Old Greek alphabet, they used the Georgian to, and then they found the letters, so they used the Georgian alphabet just to get the order of their alphabet. But I have no idea. Maybe I'm wrong. So I just I have to double check after, because I've just heard this from one person, but forgot what he was really referring to. But yeah, it's very language itself is not part of any big group. Hindu-European or Semitic languages very different. It's very different group. It's very local, and we have some similarity. We have some words taken from Arabic, Persian, Turkish, Greek, but language itself is very different and not sharing, not sharing much with other languages around us. And
Yeah, certainly. It just seems like it's been a very. It was a
yeah,
certainly pretty language when I see it writing. I have a few Facebook friends who have their name up in using that language, using that alphabet.
yeah, I
What?
just found that
Yeah,
yeah, the order of Georgian alphabet, that's what I was telling, is the same as Greek alphabet. How the order is of Greek alphabet, and then we are adding uh, at the end all of those letters that are like specific to Georgian language.
yeah. Uh, what can you tell me about the history of Georgia? I mean, it's a very old civilization. I mean, people have been some of these things go back, almost 2,000 years.
Yes.
Same for in the Caucasus region. I mean, how did Georgia, get to where it is today right now? I mean, I don't know. Let's go back maybe 100 or 200 years.
Yeah, if we talk about how, yeah, we had, before 11th century, different groups of different tribes, like being on this territory. We had kolkhies, even before that. You might be familiar from Greek mythology and Medea and all the Golden Fleece stuff. But as a Georgia as such, united, all those tribes united, we can start talking from the 11th century when we had this Bagrationi dynasty, who were our like the royal family in Georgia, and one of them, Bagrat, the king, united all those tribes, and that's how we get this unified modern Georgia. Yeah, and our history mostly were connected with wars against different conquerors, starting from like all kinds of Persia that we had in the history. Then Byzantine Empire at the beginning, and then comes all the other conquerors, Ottoman empires, Arabs who invaded in 8th century, invaded in 7th century, 8th century, and Ottoman Empire. Then we are getting in trouble with Russian Empire, and since then we are, yeah, Russia stays as one of the enemy states, unlike other neighbors with whom we have a very good friendly relations. And yeah, mostly Georgia's history is monarchy. We had kings until 1801, until Russian Empire invaded us and um, stopped the Bagrationi dynasty to be kings. And uh, yeah, we have a very good, like, I know, for example, compared to Turkish Ottoman Empire, I know many Turkish young people who don't really like that part of their history, like the Ottoman Empire, and uh, especially some of my friends, they don't like hearing even about Ottoman Empire. But compared to them, we have quite good, attitude toward our past and our monarchy. Yeah, all monarchies are bad for me. For example, especially old monarchies, it's not individualistic. It's like just having a king ruling everything and everyone others under his will. But yeah, but still, considering that it was past, still we can find very good kings with very good reforms and very good ideas. And one of the kings, like one of the main kings, David IV, you probably like saw a lot of streets and like statue of him when you enter Tbilisi. But you probably arrived from the other side of from the airport. But yeah, his ideas were very modern. He was mm, uh, very secular at the time. He was very tolerant towards other religious groups, and he was always giving equality to them. And as a Christian king, he was going to mosque, for example, praying with. Was considered that those people were also part of Georgia history and Georgia at the time. And yeah, sometimes it's even impossible these days to ask politicians to be, tolerant to all religious groups living in Georgia. But yeah, it was very normal at the time. Um, and also he was very influential in separating church and um, uh, not direct separation. He really involved in church, to be honest, but he also had like this mm, idea that we are still lacking of having churches very like fresh without corrupt people, that we have a problem nowadays. And then we had the different kings also promoting like during 17th 16th century, promoting more education and um, different stuff that really influenced the development of education in Georgia. And yeah, very good individuals from this monarchy. And we still, like, I cannot name one any person who might not have one favorite kings, and we always love talking about that part of this our history. um, as we call, like, during David, we call it golden ages, where we were the most developed. And that's what was the era when also this poem by Rustaveli was also written. And that was golden age, very successful state. We were bigger than we are today, and we were very rich. And very developed with good ideas and good uh, good successful um, history during that time. But after that coming, the dissolution of Georgia in different regions, and that was really easy for Russian Empire to invade one by one. And then comes this Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, that really, really changed. Like no other conqueror has changed a lot, I think, in people's mind than Soviet Union did, and we are still having that influence in many people. Not only people who lived during Soviet Union, but still on young people, the Soviet mentality is still visible in some ways. Unfortunately, I think because of influence of not only parents who were living during the Soviet Union, but also the school system, which is quite Soviet and haven't changed a lot. But also general ideas sometimes really popular among Georgians, still coming from the influence of Soviet Union. So we are still seeing that big influence.
Yeah. Has there always been a lot of religious diversity in Georgia? I know Jews have lived there for a long time, and you know,
Yeah, there always been, like, even today I had a opportunity to work as an objectivist. I'm atheist, but I really involved in religious stuff. I'm learning much about religion and especially how about religion and politics, because um, I'm a strong follower of secularism and secularist ideas, and I think that's one of the things that might help Georgia today to be more successful, to be more secular. And I had opportunity to work with different religion groups, and I can register, not only register but also active religious groups. I can name like 50 groups nowadays, more than 50 groups even, that are functioning really actively in Georgia. But yeah, this not only happening now but was also part of history, like from yeah, we had Jewish population when they started to migrate from uh, uh, modern day Israel. Yeah, Georgia was one of the first country who received them. uh, and then we had, this Islamic people coming and Islam spreading, sometimes by conquest, sometimes by free will of people that wanted to convert to other religion. Yeah, but in 12th century was Islam also was quite popular, and there were a lot of merchants coming from Islamic countries, and um, Jews, Muslims, Christians living together. If you had a chance to visit the old town, you would see, different. Uh, we have this old town in Tbilisi with Armenian, with Georgian, with Catholic churches, and not only with synagogue and mosques, all the like in like 5 minutes away from each other. And yeah, that really depicts how multi-religious was and multi-ethnic was our history. And mm, yeah, this king really tried a lot to, be tolerant to all of those religions. And uh, sometimes the reason was political. Like at the time, we had different taxation for example, Georgians were taxed more than Jewish and Muslims, and all that back political idea that promoting more trading and inviting more other people to come and trade here because taxation for them was lower. But yeah, still it was really like tolerant attitude and very revolutionary. For the king, Christian king, to go to mosque and pray with locals, it might be even unacceptable today. But yeah, at the time, maybe no one dared to protest it. But yeah, it's quite a revolutionary action from the king.
yeah. So it's been a lot of very much a history of tolerance. Then it sounds like that's certainly impressive. Although, because I know Armenia was the first country to adopt Christianity as a state religion, and it sounds like Georgia wasn't too much long. I think Armenia was in the third century, and Georgia may have been a little bit after that, right? Or
Yeah, it was a little bit after. in 4th century, I think, if I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
correct.
It's interesting seeing all these old religious shrines and old churches in these places. I've never seen shrines and churches that old anywhere, not even in Europe. Uh, yeah. So Georgia. So you mentioned, Georgia. I know Georgia had a brief independence movement during the Russian Revolution, and then of course there was the more successful independence movement in with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the various movements that have happened in the 20th century?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we had a small independence from 1918 to 1921 as other republics around Russia. It was revolution in Russia, and they managed to get independence during that period. And we had social democrats in power. Yeah, but we were really like this 3 years was very successful, and that was the period when we got our first constitution, a very modern, very good constitution, um, stating the separation of religion and uh, politics, which we don't have really clear now. And one of the problems that we are facing is this not secular, um, non-secularism and mixture, some kind of church and politics, especially nowadays. Ruling party is trying to mix politics and church very much, and during the time it was very secular state. It was social democrat government, but all the things all the developments that, for example, the Ilya Chavchavadze, the guy who I mentioned, the founding father, all the developments, then all the things he tried to develop the country were really visible during that 3 years. And that was period when we opened the first university. We had different political parties during, we were under Russian Empire, and then we directly got independence. And you see a lot of different political parties with clear vision, with very diverse ideas, opposing ideas. Like we had federalist parties, we have social democrats, we have um, National Democratic Party, more with classical liberal people, and we have a big variety of different political people from different political spectrum. And that was quite successful years. We always like showing that people, I'm also working as a fact checker in one of the local organization. We are normally working on Soviet propaganda, and I'm publishing articles what was different. And we sometimes have very wrong information about this 3 years because of Soviet influence, and they were really publishing a lot disinformation about this 3 years and about this social democratic leaders and the government. And I had I had an opportunity to write a lot was what was in real. And but yeah, we I think it's not really appreciated. It's not appreciated, but it's very uh, bu- like we need to publish more about those 3 years because it was very successful. And I think Georgia can use as a model in the future, because after the second independence, like in 90s, when Soviet Union was collapsed and we got second independence, it wasn't like similar to that. We had more like nationalistic sentiments, and not the sentiments that we had in 1918. And I think that really not really helped us to develop. And um, the only way to get rid of Soviet ideas was, I think, uh, to establish liberal values and not nationalistic values. Liberal here we use as classical liberal, and we didn't really do it, and we started to more nationalistic ideas. Georgia is only for Georgians, as they assigned this quote to the first president, and this really caused a lot of problems in 90s, starting from wars, and Russia really used that sentiments to create this local conflicts with Abkhazia and Tskhinvali region. But yeah, if we really allowed, classical liberal ideas to be more widely used during the time, instead of nationalistic sentiments, and sometimes like viewing Georgia as only for ethnically Georgians is very, I don't really agree with that idea, because even now we are people, we have a different people with different ethnic origins. Like we have this ethnically Armenians, ethnically Azerbaijanis, and uh, ethnically different people, like um, for example, people from Ossetia, and etc., etc. And I think Georgia is for all those who share something like together. It might not be language, it might not be religion, it might not be traditions, but something is like what unites us past is the past that we were always together. So I think someone who shares those ideas and is citizen of Georgia, yeah, it's also their country. Even we have this problem now in some people that they only look Georgians as ethnically Georgian, but for me is quite different. And for me, ethnicity is not something that defines you're Georgian, not, but more like sharing the values and being a citizen of the country. And if we look at things like that, if we looked things like that in 90s, I think we would get rid out of a lot of problems that we had during the period of time.
Yes, certainly. I mean, if you have a libertarian society, it doesn't matter what language you speak or what ethnicity you are. Do you think the the Abkhazian and the South Ossetian desire for independence is just something? It's just the Russians manipulating the people there, or do you think they genuinely don't want to be a part of Georgia?
Yeah, I think there was always sentiments for Abkhazians, like some groups of Abkhazians to get
Yeah.
independence and all the stuff. It was also like a thing in 1918 to 1921. It was always had been a thing from this period of time of Russian Empire, and but yes, but in 90s that was period when Russia really manipulated and helped a lot to because without Russia it was not possible to get win against Georgians and deport a lot of Georgians from that territory. And because Abkhazians were in minority, and then Russia had a big influence on them, and Russia had a big uh, like military help that really
Yeah.
um, they used it, and they kind of kicked Georgians out, and they won in the war in war in one. I mean that it's not controlled by us
Mm.
nowadays. Yeah,
Yeah. Unfortunately, Russia and the Soviet Union do have a history of implementing forced migrations on people.
yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
they did that with quite a few people in the Caucasus region. Although a lot of Americans don't realize it, though, you actually have about 30 different languages in the Caucasus region. I mean, not just, I mean, the Dagestan, Chechens, and other
Yeah, Dagestan, as I know, has
English
many
and
many languages.
Azerbaijan. I mean, yeah, it does seem that people often do come together when they share a common language. I mean, even if I mean, if you're going to live under a dictator, you'd rather live under a dictator that speaks your language than a dictator that speaks a different language. But at least that seems to be the tendency. But I don't know, how legitimate these movements are, if they're just being instigated by the Russians, or if they're legitimately. I mean, certainly there are some legitimate independence movements out there. And I don't know what, obviously it's not in Georgia, but what do you think about the whole situation with Armenia and Azerbaijan?
Yeah, it's quite complicated. The situation in the region, always Georgia is not really stating that it's a pro-Azerbaijan or pro-Armenia, but we are always in the middle. As an individual, I'm more promoting countries, and I'm always in favor of countries that are promoting more freedom. Uh, Before that time, Armenia was under Russian influence, but I'm really happy nowadays, and it's going out of Russian influence,
Yeah.
and it's really moving towards democracy and like protecting human rights, and I really like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Azerbaijan stays the opposite. With it's not pro-Russian country, but it stays under some kind of dictatorship and limited human rights protection. Opposition is very in very hard times there, and um, yeah, that's all I can comment on that topic.
Yeah.
I hope they will find a deal, but Armenia is really going well in not only in like protecting human rights or developing and moving towards democracy, but also trying to really end this conflict and really open as a
Yeah.
country, because it's now in a bad situation that they have not good relations with their neighbors. Georgia is the only neighbor maybe with whom they have a good relations, and I think uh, that's really mm, like damages the lives of individuals there, that having
Certainly.
bad relations with your neighbors. And I think one day it all fixed and they find a deal with Azerbaijan and continue, because we have uh, Azerbaijanis and Armenians living in Georgia. They have really good relations. I was involved with a lot of projects with them. They have no problem with each other. They're Georgians, but they still have this ethnical identity of Azerbaijan and Armenian, but they really go well with each other. And I'm really sure that's also possible with people living in, like, as citizens, Armenian citizens, Azerbaijan citizens. So
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, what I actually went to Armenia before I went to Georgia,
mhm.
and I, well, when I left Georgia, I flew out, but I actually came into Georgia on the ground. I had a guy actually drove me from Yerevan all the way to Tbilisi,
Mhm.
and it was certainly a pretty little drive, but I definitely noticed differences. It seemed like Georgia was about 15 years ahead of Armenia. And another difference too was I saw Ukrainian flags everywhere in Georgia. I did not see a Ukrainian flag anywhere in Armenia.
Yeah, I think that's all the results of 203 revolution, when we had more like this revolution and a lot of ideas that really boosted our economy, and we started developing. And Armenia had revolution a little bit later, a revolution that a little bit failed and what was not as successful as our revolution in 2003. And yeah, this revolution really helped us to modernize the country, modernize the institutions that were, Georgia was a failed state in 90s with corruption and with all this poverty and with the war, a lot of wars in the beginning, and um, corruption in police and in all institutions. Like, without corruption, nothing was possible. Like, getting education without corruption was impossible at all. And in 2003, all of those things really stopped. Like, corruption was no more a thing. It decreased to the minimum level, and people start to, you know, we start to modernize. We opened ways to Europe and European institutions. Um, we opened country for a lot of investments. And it was really successful period. And then we started, like, doing so. We started moving towards European Union and NATO, and that really helped us to like modernize more and become more like moving back to
Yeah.
our European values that we had lack of in during Soviet Union in 90s. And nowadays it also affect that we have, visa-free regime with the European Union, and Georgians traveling a lot to Europe, and they're seeing European values and uh, it really helps us to get rid of the Soviet past, and I think traveling is something that really affects people's mind in a good way. It depends where you travel, but those traveling to Europe and seeing European culture, and because there even today we have a lot of anti-European propaganda coming from Russia. If we get into EU, EU might not be a good union, when it comes to their economy and all the stuff, but uh, I mean Europe in general here. When you there comes a lot of Russian propaganda. If we join EU or Europe as such, we will have, they have this mm, propaganda also, anti-American propaganda, and all the bad stuff come from the West. But people traveling there and they see everything opposite. Like they don't see all those things the Russian are propagating here, and they see quite like opposite, big culture, big respect towards family, big respect to religion, and all the stuff that people might be afraid here in Georgia that they would lose it if they join Europe, but they see quite opposite. And I think this visa-free regime had a big influence of people's mindset towards European Union and in Western countries in general.
Yeah, it definitely looks like. So how do you think Georgia got rid of the corruption? I know there was they call it the Rose Revolution, and of course you even brought back the flag of the five crosses.
They just decreased the taxes, like um they limited a lot of tax. They decreased the taxes from, I don't know what was the number, but we had a lot of high, big tax, not only high taxes, but in quantity taxes were a lot, and they decreased to minimum number. But also they decreased the bureaucracy really much, and they fired a lot of people who were part of this corruption. They started building from a new foundation, and I think that was the way how they did it. I'm not an expert on that period, but yeah, the one two things that really happened was this decrease in taxes, and Georgia has one of the. I was attending a meeting a few days. And one of the countries who has this like lowest taxes in numbers, and also in there's as I know the tax uh, countries rating by taxation, like what kind of taxes they have, and Georgia is one of in top five countries, as I remember. But also the reform of bureaucracy and firing a lot of corrupted police and a lot of corrupted individuals who were like for whom corruption was like a way of living, and then founding something new on new foundation with problems. We have to mention also that the new government also like developed a lot of stuff, but they had this elitist corruption, as we call it, and some kind of human rights abuses on the state level. But everything that was on the local level, the thefts and all the criminal activities by individuals were, just stopped being after 2003 and after the revolution. So I was born in 1999. So for me, that was period when I started school, and I saw all those development in my school. For example, how my school developed and all the stuff. And yeah, I was very lucky being a student during the time, rather than in 90s, which was I think one of the worst periods of in the modern day history.
Certainly. So, yeah, so do you think Mikhail Saakashvili has anything to do with cleaning up the corruption, or was it, or who else was responsible for that? I mean, it doesn't just disappear.
Yes, there were
It
different
takes a lot of
people.
work to
Yeah.
get corruption out once it's gotten so entrenched.
Yeah, sure. There's different people, in that new revolutionary movement, like different individuals working different topics. But yeah, Saakashvili was something that um, gave energy to all those things and gave like united all those things and became a good leader during that period of time. And um, yeah, I think without those individuals, some things might not be possible. But without him, Saakashvili, this revolution is also under question because he really became a good leader at the time and a popular leader in human beings. And it was also part of messianistic, in Georgia, people love to find a messiah and look for messiah, and it was also part of it. But yeah, he has a good influence on the first part of after the revolution. Yeah, then things changed a little bit, but still, I see this good values in him during the revolution and after a few years after revolution.
What was the attitude last year when Mikhail Gorbachev died in Georgia? I mean, were Georgians were they do they consider Gorbachev a friend of Georgian independence, or is he still the bad guy because he's Russian, or what was the reaction to that?
Yeah, many people even didn't know that he was alive. It was the comments I saw was, "Oh, he was still alive," and
Yeah.
no, we don't like him. It was because during the independence period in 1989, was we had this massacre, Tbilisi massacre, which was also connected to him. And this is the day when there was a student protest in Tbilisi, and 21 people died because Soviet tanks attacked the capital. And um, that was Gorbachev period. And yeah, people not really. Uh, the only people you can find here, like it's also a minority who might love Soviet Union. They would all love Stalin. As a Georgian, but it's a big minority. It's a small minority, not big. And but normally a lot of people are just anti-Soviet Union, and
Yeah.
they realize what effect they had on our modern day lives.
So that's good to know. So most Georgians have a negative view of the most famous Georgian of all. Really, I mean, Stalin.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't seen any research on that, but what I see around me, especially young people, yeah, young
Yeah.
people agree that um, yeah, Stalin was a tyrant because as a nation, I cannot see the same attitude what Germans have toward Hitler. We don't have
Yes.
same as bad like attitude as a nation because we still see some Stalin statues in villages that locals put, or some Stalin idealizing museum, for example, in his hometown. Because it's not the same as Germans look Hitler, but
Yeah.
yeah, especially young people, I see that they just agree that Stalin was a bad guy, like was a
Yeah.
killer, mass killer, and yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
think it will change more.
Yeah, and he certainly was very, very terrible to some of the other ethnic groups in the Caucasus region. I think sometimes somebody just opens up his house and makes it into the term we use in America is called a tourist trap. It's just a way you can have people come and visit something and spend money and buy gifts, and it's just a way to.
Mhm.
Of course, in Mongolia, the main airport's still named after Genghis Khan, for goodness sakes. So, so but yeah, so certainly Georgia's creating its own legacy. I I really loved what I saw there. It just seemed like it's such a beautiful country in so many ways. So so now so what do you one thing I'm curious to know, what's the climate like at the average Georgian college? I mean, are the college professors there in favor of capitalism too, or are they socialists like they're socialists every place else?
I think it's more. Yeah, I don't. It's more capitalist, I think, because for us, socialists and communists were in power, so the opposition and this educational opposition and all this people in the opposition had to be capitalist to be opposition of Soviet Union and socialist ideas. And I think nowadays it's not like in the US and in Western Europe that we see like a lot of leftist ideas in colleges. Yeah, we sure have some leftist professors, very active and very popular, but still the environment is quite capitalist in most universities. It's not radical capitalist as I would call, but still like it's like center right. We can call it center right. Um, in top universities, mostly, yeah,
Yes.
it's quite
Georgia,
that. We have a
Georgia.
lot of university like three, four, or yeah, mainly three universities are really promoting classical libertarian ideas, like Free University, University of Georgia, and etc. But yeah, we don't have very like we don't have such university that might be really leftist. My university was a mixture. We had a lot of classical liberal professors, but also some leftist professors um, in um, uh, in most like on different faculties in arts and sciences faculties than on business. So it's not a big problem like in the US. Uh, leftist professors, but yeah, it might get worse in the future. So
Yeah.
nowadays it's quite normal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a problem in the U.S. I don't. A lot of my libertarian friends worldwide have. I think they still have a romantic vision of America, and American libertarians see all the problems here. And believe me, we're not. A lot of American libertarians are even leaving the country. They're just they're to a certain extent giving up on the country. I certainly think a lot about it. Not to mention, it seems like to me that also there's very much there's so much hostility now also between men and women in America that it's become unhealthy, and I didn't
Yeah,
see
and
that in Georgia.
I think that those kind of attitudes like also like very visible in many countries like um, in Georgia it's very active now that many young people live in country that they don't have this hope that yeah Georgia is moving back these days, to corruption, to um, like a lot of economic problems, and uh, young people just don't see their future here, their good future here, so they're forced to leave. And I think I see the same problem in many countries also, like not only in the US that people are leaving, but yeah, I was living in Europe for some times, and I also like I see people in many countries they're not really like where they are and how they live and want to leave for something better. So it's kind of changing a lot, and people are moving away a lot. But I see this problem really big in Georgia these days. Like a lot of people are leaving daily, and in my friends, I know like most of my friends want to also leave country and find some other jobs in Europe or in the US, and that's quite becoming problematic, especially these days after um, war war started. Russia's war against Ukraine started, and uh, economy became quite worse, and more people tried to think to escape from Georgia because of this um, economic problems and low opportunities for young people and
Yeah.
for people in general.
Yeah, ever since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I've also noticed there's this group called the Georgian Legion, and there are actually some Georgians who went to fight with the Ukrainians against the Russians. Do you know anybody who's doing that?
Personally, I know some people like I'm not friends with them, but I know them who went to Ukraine war. A lot of people went to Ukraine war. Some of them died on the field. We consider as heroes, like normal Georgian people here, but government is not really, government is not really pro-Ukrainian these days, and that's a real shame on the country level. And yeah, personally, I'm really ashamed of that because Georgia and Ukraine have the same kind of history connected to Russia, and victory of Ukraine means a victory of Georgia as well. And yeah, I think we should be more. People are really open-minded about that. They're really active. Uh, uh, they're really active in promoting Ukraine and in defending Ukraine and being with Ukraine, but not government is not something similar, and it's visible each day. But yeah, I think those Georgians going there not only doing job for Ukrainians, but also doing a big thing for the future of Georgia, because the victory of Russia would be a really disaster of for Georgia as well in the region, and victory for the Ukraine would be something that would give more power for us um, against Russia, and more hope as well, as Georgia still remains occupied by Russia. And um, yeah, I think the value of those people going there is really high,
Yeah.
and states should be like more proud of their citizens who go there and fighting for not only for Ukraine but for Georgia.
Yeah. Do you think there'd be the same effort if, say, Russia attacked the Baltic countries or attacked Finland? Do you think there'd be a Georgian Legion going there too?
Yeah, I think Baltic country, yes. Yeah, that's. I think yes, but yeah, Ukraine is something like we're more friendly with them and with Baltic states than
Yeah,
might be with Finland. But I don't know how it will change it. But still,
yeah,
Georgians fighting against Russia in anywhere in the world would be like
yeah.
still a good job for Georgia itself.
Well, I think there's definitely the attitude. If Russia beats Ukraine, what are they going to do next? So
Yeah.
if they lose, but if they lose, they're going to go back and lick their wounds. I mean, it's a really hard to say. Yeah, I mean, I'm 51 years old, but I got to ask, if Russia attacks Georgia, what can I do to help you guys? I'm serious. I loved your country. I might very well get on a plane and say, hey, what can I do for you? I mean, I know I'm too old to be a soldier, but
I think what is important, like people living abroad really send a message, still, um, because I see this kind of even in American libertarian movement, like
yeah,
people not saying, like some people can't really understand the difference between Russia and Ukraine. Some libertarian thinkers are commenting, Ukraine is not a free country, so we shouldn't be in favor of it, and they're sometimes equalizing Ukraine and Russia, which is really, really like not correct to do so, because we see a Ukraine which might not be as free as other Western European or America, a free country, but it's something that's going towards freedom, that's going towards more
yeah,
protecting individual rights. And on the other hand, we see the Russia who just like not only uh, like respect rights internally, but also going against the rights of other countries, and always making troubles in the region, attacking free countries. And that's, I think, very sad what's happening in some parts of American conservative and libertarian movements, very anti-Ukrainian speeches sometimes. And here, as a fact checker, I always, follow the trends, what local pro-Russian groups uh, are promoting. And sometimes, yeah, I see, they're promoting interviews from American conservatives saying anti-Ukrainian stuff, and I think one can do in Western countries just to help either Georgia or Ukraine is to spread right ideas and to spread ideas that would show people what is distinction, and because some people cannot understand this distinction, some
yeah,
people even equalizing, Russia and United States, like they say that they also attack countries, but it's very different what Russia attacks and what you and how United States, using his army in Middle East or wherever it is, and the distinction is that Russia attacks those countries who wants freedom, and Russia attacks those countries who moving towards protecting individual rights, building a modern day free country. Russia hates that. Russia attacks all
Yeah.
those ideas, and it's very different to attack someone just to self defense and attack someone just to like prevent them from building a free nation.
Well, one thing, yeah, most libertarians, and myself included, we really would like to see America be like Switzerland, just where we sit back and don't get involved, at least on an official level, because it's corrupted our own institutions so much that we've really lost a lot of the principles that we fought for, over
Yes.
200 years ago. Uh, and I really think, and I don't think there's any way America could possibly fight anything like World War II at this point. Our country is infrastructure and just the culture has just broken down so much. I really think getting involved with this war might very well rip the country apart, the same way that World War One ripped the old Russian Empire apart. There's very much an attitude that we've got to fix our own house before we go go help defend somebody else's house. It's and I don't
Yeah.
think America. I don't think America. If America is going to lead the world, we have to lead by example, and we haven't done that for a long time. Like I said, on a personal note, I loved your country as much as any country I visited. I would certainly be, and it's easy to sit in the stadium and watch the game. It's a different thing to get down on the field and play the game, and that's how I
Yeah.
feel about it. I don't want to just sit up there and tell somebody else go do it.
Yeah, I absolutely
Yeah,
agree on that point.
yeah, yeah. America's a very troubled country in a lot of ways. And there is in some cases though too this sentiment that especially with some of the more conservative thinkers in America, that at least Russia still supports things like the family. And I mean, America has become a very anti-family country. We have a 50% divorce rate, and or some just like to say, well, at least in Russia they know which bathroom to use. You know, the culture in America has collapsed so much that I think a lot of people just don't really care anymore about. Uh, I mean, even myself, I certainly think about leaving America too. Maybe moving to Mexico or moving somewhere else, just because there's a lot of problems here, and we see them up close just because we live here. But yeah, and I don't know how we're going to root out this corruption. One other thing I saw in Georgia is that, especially when I was around Freedom Square, it seemed like Georgia was very uh, forward in adopting Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's quite popular these days. I'm not into that really, into that um, topic and field, and have never used anything from that part. But yeah, it's quite popular in young people. Like many people are, um, and mining is very popular here locally, and many people, as I knew, were part of it, and um, we had a lot of also conferences and meetings on that topic from
Yeah,
libertarian groups, and it's getting more and more attention from people nowadays. And mm, yeah, I also see this Bitcoin ATMs and all the stuff around, and in many places you can also pay with Bitcoin, and uh, yeah, it's quite used here locally, quite popular. Uh, but yeah, individual, I'm not involved in
Yeah.
that stuff yet, maybe. But yeah, I see a lot of young people see the benefits involved in it and are earning money from it, and also those who are educating others on the topic. We have some, TV, even on Libertarian Party's TV channel, a TV show about that. They are discussing all the stuff every week or every day, even sometimes, and it's quite a popular topic in even now in modern. But it was very, very popular a few years ago, like when it all started.
Yeah. It's still going strong. I'm glad to see that. That's what I said. It seemed like Georgia was very forward thinking. It seemed like there was a lot of just seemed like the really I just like the vibe and the attitude there was a thought, uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's
quite
great.
modern. We
Yeah.
have a lot of problems, I see, but sometimes I also see the value that even some European countries might not have in Western Europe. Like it's very modern in terms of payments, in terms of banking, in terms of getting SIM cards. Everything is so easy here and very comfortable that you can make like um, payments in a second through online banking. And even in the US, when I was there, I was get payment with a check. All the things was complicating going to the bank and giving this check and then getting money, or sending money, and then it needs like 3 to 5 days. And here we just send them from the same bank it gets in a second, and from other bank it just takes you just get in a few hours. And it's so quite easy here to yeah, open a bank account, to get SIM card, and all this kind of things are really comfortable and easy, while in Europe it might takes a few days. And
Yeah.
um, especially with state documents, it's very easy. You can get here passport or any other state document in just a few hours, which is quite
Yeah.
like comfortable. And the value of we after the Rose Revolution, it's part of this value that we got from the revolution. But yeah, all of the things are not really like that stays with us lifelong. So we have to maintain it. We have to keep it in. We have to understand how we reached such level, and if we understand this, then yeah, then we are on the good way. Because what happened during the revolution, this I think this revolution and the free market ideas that we developed after the revolution was coming not from the people, but from above. So people really did not understand it. So I think first people need to understand it, and all those ideals that we are talking about should come from the people, whether it's economic freedom or individual freedom. If it comes from above, okay, we can have it, but it won't be long lasting. But if it comes from people, when people really realize that it's important, then it might be more long lasting. And we can see these examples in the whole world about that.
Certainly, yes. That's good to know. Yeah, because that's one of the beauties of Bitcoin is it's completely decentralized. There's nobody who controls it or who's a guru.
Yes.
It's one of the more revolutionary things I think for libertarian thinking. Is there anything with Ayn Rand or libertarianism going on in your neighboring countries like Armenia or Azerbaijan, or is it mostly just going on in Georgia?
Yes, in Armenia, it's going quite well. We have a partner organization, Ayn Rand Center Armenia. They're doing really nice stuff. We just had a meeting yesterday with them, and really nice things going in Armenia, promoting objectivism, translations, websites, and different programs that really allows local Armenian young people, and not only young people, to learn about Ayn Rand's ideas. And I think it's quite important for them, as well, as they're now moving towards democracy and towards modern state. So I think for people, such kind of ideas is really important. When it comes to Azerbaijan, it's a little bit difficult, to have such organizations there. But I think this Jungle School, which is a great project by Ayn Rand Center Europe is available in different countries and also in Azerbaijan. I was a speaker there twice this year, last year, um, and it happens. It takes place online, but a lot of young people are interested in learning about Ayn Rand's ideas, and not only Ayn Rand's, but they are a lot of good followers of libertarian movement and Students for Liberty. They might not be as open as we can be here and in doing things, but they're still they're still trying their best, and I think they're achieving a lot considering their situation.
Certainly, yes. Ayn Rand Center Armenia looks like they're doing quite well. I I thought the people in Armenia were so nice. I had one of the nicest Airbnb hosts I've ever had there. It just seemed like the people were so friendly and just so polite and so welcoming. I visited the Genocide Museum and I visited Garni and Gegard because it just had all these religious monuments. I mean, obviously there's
Yeah,
some similarities, but it's also different. I hope. I do think Armenia is one reason why they stay close to Russia, though, is because they hate the Turks, and the Turks and the Russians have fought a lot of wars. I don't know if,
yeah, I think that's the reason. Like
yeah,
they have bad relations with Azerbaijan, with Turkey, and um, those are big actors in the region. So
yeah,
for a small country, they need some kind of tie to a big nation, and
yeah,
Russia was first for them, and also Russia had military bases there, so it's kind of also hard to get rid of them. But I think Armenia is now moving towards more European Union, and that's how we can, like Georgia, Armenia can get together, move towards Western, and get rid of Russian influence completely. We're one step like forward
yeah.
in terms of not having any Russian military base on our controlled territory. But yeah, Armenia is quite doing well um, in modern day researches, and all the researches show uh, how advanced they're becoming, like in different things that we might fail these days because of modern day politics in Georgia.
Yeah, well, Armenia only has four, only borders four countries, and if they to get any imports there, they either have to go through Georgia or they have to go through Iran, since they don't have good relations with Turkey or Azerbaijan, so they're not definitely not in a good situation. And I had Josh Friedman on here, and he told me that the Russians actually sell weapons to both sides. So they're selling weapons to Armenia and they're selling weapons to Azerbaijan. So I guess Russia wants to keep the war going on. I mean, because
Yeah, it's always
because they're not on friendly terms. I mean, it sounds like Georgia's on pretty good terms with both Armenia and Azerbaijan, though.
yeah, it's quite, I think,
Yeah,
normal. Like we don't have this, we never
yeah,
get problems for because of
yeah,
that from any side.
yeah.
And yeah, Russia is doing that, and then it's appearing as a peacekeeper. But yeah, it's, I think, a contradiction in terms to use peacekeeping with Russia,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, uh, when my driver took me from Yerevan, we went by Lake Sevan, and Lake Sevan, and we actually got quite close to the border there. And it was funny. I wondered why Google Maps was telling us not to go on this road, but then it dawned on me. I said, "Oh, maybe that's why."
Yeah, I
Because
was
we,
on the same road. It's
yeah,
going really close.
yeah, it's yeah, because but me and my driver seemed to know what he was doing. He was a really nice guy. And my Airbnb host actually set me up with a driver, and we what was nice about having a driver, you can always say stop photos, take some pictures, but so Armenian people just seemed like they were really nice and just really welcoming. They enjoyed having, but they probably don't get that many visitors there. You were talking about the situation with Russians coming into Georgia. This is one of those real hard cases for me as a libertarian. I want people to be free to move, but are the Russians coming into Georgia because they sincerely don't support what's going on there, or are they just going to come into Georgia and then agitate and sabotage Georgia from within? It's a little bit like the Trojan
Yeah, I
horse.
think,
What's your take on that? I mean, and how can you really know if they're really supportive of Georgia or not?
yeah, I think that's very, yeah, that was something really separated libertarians in Georgia, even like what they were
Yeah.
in favor. Yeah, I know some Russians like who came here, and the reasons might be the first that especially with men and boys, that they won't get rid of army and get rid of war. And I really understand it. And it's really hard to, say someone who is escaping to be a Russian soldier and say no, go back. There are some people who just came for comfort, like the a lot of because of a lot of sanctions, they cannot do much in Russia, so they came here in Georgia, and they can stay here a lot, like long time, like a year, and then they can leave just for they come back and another year, and that's like really easy visa policy of Georgia for many countries. Um, yeah, there's some people still with Russian imperialistic ideas that coming, and it always there's some incidents happens between like local Georgians and Russians sometimes because of this imperialistic view. Yeah, but I think I'm quite mixed on that. I think mm, the border is a little bit the border control. Like I saw many news that opposition, for example, opposition media once was not allowed in country, and I think it's terrible thing that happened. Like uh, opposition is someone you should allow first, and then others, Russian opposition who is your ally, but our government is very like becoming more showing that it's more and more pro-Russian these days. Uh, I think yeah, it should be. I'm not really against of people coming, but it should be more strict. It should be more strict, like filter you should have on the border, I think, and I don't know how it can be done. I'm not expert in border policy, but it should be stricter than that it might be today. So I'm not in favor of complete closure of the border. I think you should allow those who are openly opposition, those who are openly who had done something anti-Putin, they just escaping or they're just afraid. But yeah, just to open border, like allow everyone might not be a good idea. Also, because we are in war also with Russia, and um, but the argument that Russia would use, the uh, sometimes Russia says that we have to defend our citizens. That's why we're attacking some other countries. But Russia doesn't need citizens even here. They might just said this, we're doing this, and they do it. So they just not don't need citizens here to have a reason to attack Georgia one day. There's a lot of argument like this from some Georgians that Russia will use those citizens and create problems from them, and then they will use that for the reason to attack Georgia. But I don't think it's legitimate because Russia does not need any reason, any legit reason to attack someone. They just can create it.
Certainly, yeah, that's definitely an issue. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
but I personally I dislike the ideas. I know many people that they might not, they see someone Russian and they just get rid of them. But I really against of
yeah,
it as seeing an individual as part of collective. You might hate Russia, you might hate, the everything Russian, but when once you look at an individual as a part of collective and just deciding how you interact with them on the basis of their collective ethnicity or citizenship, whatever it is, it's I think just you're getting wrong because I have a lot of Russian objectivist, even objectivist friends, a lot of Russian libertarians also coming here. So, it just not about our citizenship of ethnicity, but rather than our individuality. Because you might find Georgians also who are pro-Russian, so ethnicity does not change a lot.
yes, most definitely. I mean, it's certainly a very interesting situation with and I know a lot of great Russians too. In fact, I think that's maybe one of the things that's hurt Russia is ever since the end of the Soviet Union, it seems like a lot of the good Russians leave. and then Russia's just stuck with these citizens who carry pictures of Stalin in public. And I mean, one of the questions I've been asking myself is, do the Russians want to live under a government that abuses them? And sometimes I
I
think
think
they,
there is very low responsibility on
yeah,
that, and really tradition of having freedom, like it's not that active as it's in Georgia, for example. Now we have fought a lot for freedom, not freedom from other countries, but also freedom inside. Um, but Russia don't have such a big tradition of it, like, um, and this liberty movement is not as like, for example, in Belarus, I think liberty movement is more active, and uh, we saw a lot of demonstrations in previous years, people fighting for their freedom. But in Russia, it might be like more stricter. Government might be stricter towards them. I know a lot of Russian freedom fighters, but what I saw from international media, it's more active in Belarus, and I don't know the reason. It might be the reason might be stricter laws against
mhm.
freedom fighters, or more freedom fighters in prison in Russia. But that might also be the tradition of fighting freedom, what tradition we have, and um,
Yeah. Well, what would happen if all those Russians, that are at the border of Georgia would simply go to the Kremlin and you know and march on there? What would happen if they did that?
yeah, I don't think it will happen.
Yeah.
Um, even many Russians I know who are like pro freedom, they say that one day after war finishes, they could go back to their country, and it's still their home country. They have homes there. They have all
Family.
memories there. So mm, there might be some trials, like you mentioned. There might be, who knows? But Russia does not need any citizens here to do such things. They can do anytime with the hands of Georgians, even such things that they always do that, um, with organizations that are funded by them in here, Georgian organizations, and yeah, this fear is, I think, legitimate, but I don't really think it might happen.
Most certainly. I definitely think there. I hope that we can certainly
Yeah,
certainly.
the thing that I'm most afraid is just not Russian citizens, but pro-Russian government, and a lot of a lot of Georgian groups that are funded by Russia and still having, mm, some kind of influence on some part of the people, and just having violent attacks. Like what happens these days is just they choose their enemies and they attack. They just prevent them from having lectures. One of the professor, for example, had this problem a few weeks ago, that this pro-Russian groups blocked his way to the lecture where he had a lecture, and government does nothing, and that's unfortunate, and um, that's very bad, because those groups then feel that they are in power, and then they becoming more and more violent, and they always act under they always act uh, um, as someone who preserve the traditions, but being pro-Russian has never been a tradition in Georgia, so people really have to see the difference, and people have to really see those groups openly, and um, not as someone who preserves traditions, but those who are acting and doing pro-Russian stuff in the name of preserving traditions, and that's it. That's the reality.
Certainly. Well, I certainly wish you best. What do you think the future holds for Georgia? Where do you think Georgia is going to be in the next 10 or 20 years?
I'm very not like hopeful in 10 years. we will still have this. We are having elections in 2024, but I think this will just show uh, the destruction of opposition. Our opposition is very weak, not only because of the government and what they do, but also because of themselves. They're really like a big part of opposition is not very principled. They say something, they do opposite the other day, and with all those stuff, they really stated nihilism in people, and yeah, with those nihilism that is very uh, like common in modern day Georgia is very bad, like for our development. And in 10 years, I don't think something will change for better. Yeah, it's all about us, but yeah, the situation is now very bad, very weak opposition, and they can do nothing. But I think the
Well,
problem can be solved if they show more principled attitude. And what opposition now is doing, they're just talking about what is bad in government, and they're not talking about they will change. And they're just talking on the stuff that people don't really relate themselves. But if you start talking about what you will change in education, what you will change in economy, what you will change in the everyday life of people with disabled people, or all this stuff, when you try to be closer to society and talk about the problems that society really face, they might listen you more. And now they're just talking about why government is bad, and people don't really mind it. People, yeah, okay, we understand that it's bad, but what will you change? So once they start talking on that, I think people will start more uh, like relating themselves to opposition parties. Because if you like, there was a survey yesterday, and people just like don't relate to any opposition party. Like they have really, really lowest numbers of people relating to them, and most people are undecided. And this undecided means that they don't trust anyone, and it's very sad. So I think it's in the hands of opposition the change, so they can really fix themselves first, and then they will see the effects.
yes, certainly. One thing I should ask also, how prepared is Georgia for a possible Russian attack? I mean, personally, I think every Georgian adult, able-bodied Georgian adult, should own two pistols and one rifle. When they cross the border, you shoot them.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think not prepared at all. Like our defense budget is very low. Like it's not very sufficient. And what nowadays we have is like mandatory military service, which is terrible. You're just going, even not studying like military stuff, but uh, you're set as a guardian of some state buildings. But I think what Libertarian Party is promoting is contract army, which will be a more professional army. But they also is in favor of doubling or like expanding military budget, and creating modern day army, which would be um, like better in defense of the country. But what modern day government is doing is just you know still playing on the emotions of the people, and still promoting this mandatory military service, that they think that um, all this like populist ideas that yeah, they don't even see the value in this contract army, which is really valuable. And we had like in 2003 this 13 the trial that we would go on that reform, but then the government changed the idea and changed the mind, and they still playing on the emotions of people that everyone should go through army and serve their country. But okay, but it's not really whatever system we have. It's not really serving country or learning something that you would use in the war. You're just becoming guardian, like staying on one place every day and just like you're a guardian of the state building. It might be a ministry of something or another state building. And you're not really ready then later for the war if there is one. But the opposite would be like good defense budget uh, and showing people opportunities in the army. And if you come army, you will be appreciated. You will get this kind of salary, and you will learn a lot. And I think showing people that more people will go, because what is happening now, people want to get rid of military service because they're working. They're those who are like giving money to their family, and they if they go to this mandatory military service, they will lose those jobs, and they will get in return nothing. They just low amount of money, lost job, and just being a slave of the state. So I think that if we have this contract army and really showing people the opportunities in this contract army with high salaries and all the stuff, the more people will be involved, and we'll have more opportunities to have like better army and better quality of defense.
Certainly. Well, yeah, the other thing too is I wanted to point out that I noticed business wise, it looked like it was very easy to rent a car in Georgia. I didn't rent a car, but I saw people renting out cars everywhere. Then I went online and said, yeah, it's cheap. There's definitely not a lot of barriers to doing business in Georgia.
Yeah, it's very easy to register. Like, for example, I registered Ayn Rand Center Georgia is just like 10 minutes it took in the registration agency, and easier for business and really good opportunities for business like low taxes and um, yeah, you can be like you can pay only 1% tax until some kind of um, some kind of level. So it's really good for new businesses to start operating. But it's not enough. Like I think if you don't change the general mm, situation, what is happening now, that only low taxation will not change it, especially
Yeah,
for foreigners. Like nowadays, investments are not really as much as it was in the past, and that's also a problem. And that's all caused by the problems in judiciary and not fixed court and not like objective court and not still corruption in court is really high, and in, investors really see it, and if they are in trouble they won't get justice, so they're just avoiding this country. So I think everything something that we can start uh, renovating this country and putting it back on the good way is just to start with judiciary and fixing all the problems that we have in courts, um, and really building like um, justice in that, because nowadays if you ask people, I think they will say that they cannot get justice from our court today, and it's very unfortunate. Court is something that is very much needed for development of the country in general. So only economy is not enough.
definitely not. So, anything else you? Oh, I should ask. If Americans go visit Georgia, what should they definitely go see?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would probably um like recommend Batumi, which is the seaside city in on the Black Sea region. It really
Yes,
shows our development with all this modern buildings and modern architecture, and especially these days, if someone coming these days, the ski resorts are really famous, and we have a lot of ski resorts easily accessible
Yeah.
from the capital, and from major cities. There are different ski resorts that are accessible from major cities in just 2-3 hours. Really nice resorts, and we are now having a lot of snow these days, and
Yeah.
it's really good destination.
Yep.
Uh,
Any good mountain sites somebody should go see, like
yeah, we
just check
have
out the natural beauty.
my favorite is the resort Godauri. I'm not really in ski.
Yeah.
I'm not really a winter person, but Godauri
Yeah.
is. I also messaged Godauri is a good ski resort, easily accessible from capital. It's very beautiful. It's on the way to the Russian border to Kazbegi, and it's the nature there is just amazing, and
Yeah.
it's a good and cheap destination for people coming from Western countries
Yeah.
to travel.
Yeah. It's not that easy to get to the Caucasus region though, because there aren't that many, even airlines that go there. But yeah,
Yeah, there are
I ended
no
up.
direct flights from the
Yeah.
US, but I think they're
Yeah.
beginning soon from the
Yeah.
summer.
Well, there aren't even a whole lot of flights from the greater part of Europe. I mean, I flew out there and I spent a few days in Warsaw after I visited Tbilisi. And then I went home from Warsaw. But yeah, it was definitely worth visiting it. And winter sports. I remember it. I think it was back at the 2000 Olympics, 2010 Olympics. There was a Georgian luger who actually had an accident and got killed. I believe it was rather
Yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah,
Yeah, that was.
yeah,
But it
yeah.
always.
I
Yeah,
remember that.
yeah. But certainly that had to be national news because you don't send that many people to the Olympics. So, is there anything else you want to say before we go?
Yeah, just thank you a lot, like for having this discussion. It was very interesting also for me, and you're welcome back for conferences or in general. So I think we have quite interesting conferences annually. As an Ayn Rand Center Georgia, we do not host any conference
Yeah.
for now, but once we are ready to do it, you are
Yeah.
kindly invited.
Haven't done anything with the David Kelly and the Atlas Society, have you?
I did personally. I did some video translations.
Oh yeah,
They have this Draw My Life videos.
yeah, certainly.
That's all I did. And I sometimes appear on Atlas Society's Instagram takeover and answer the questions that people have.
That's great. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, well, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel,
Yeah, sure.
and
I will
on
also
my
share
side,
on our page.
and go and look up the Ayn Rand Center Georgia, and go buy my. I'm Chris Baker. Go buy my novel Escape from the Village, and certainly go visit Georgia sometime. It's definitely it's not that easy to get there, but it's definitely worth a visit. I really loved it. I really came back there a lot more optimistic. It was great having you on here, and we will stop the recording now.